was here. But it was my own reassurance bouncing round 100,000 times in my own ecosphere. If every time you speak you keep it off the record, consequently you can keep your record clear. And if you mute the speech that shakes your frail beliefs, you only seek to insulate your image and continue down the stream in the direction clout and credit steers. Directly from your mouth into am I the asshole Reddit's ears. Directly back into the greasy pockets of some Gates Foundation financiers. And then directly back into the frantic final thoughts of early trial Neuralink volunteers, staring at the numb and mumbling vacancies where recently had been their peers. Half of whom are glitching with the memory stuck on pause, and half have zero fucking clue just who they are or why they're here. It's been said that fear is all we have to fear, but that was back before the basosphere condenser came along, distilling concentrated fear that's diamond pure, crystal clear, oppressor strong, and woven into every single article you read and song they let you hear. And then Elon heard that Jeff enhanced our fears by 86%, and he said, hold my beer. And not a single sheep among the herd would turn their head or say a word, cause they were all too busy begging for the shears, begging for the muzzle, happy just to guzzle, feed, and watch a screen for all their years. Man, to each his own, can't afford a home, but they'll let you have your cozy little ecosphere, where there among your own devices you can break the seventh seal, overthrow the oracles and slay the seer. All the tomes were burned and all the lips were seared. Shut your eyes and all our lives just disappear. Now blink them twice. Welcome to your ecosphere.
Legend says that Hercules swept Cerberus right off his feet and effortlessly set him down softly as a songbird. Atlas kept the world upon his back and every day wondered whether he could stand it any longer. And Reade came out to say the man they tried to label the messiah of morality was really just another rapist. And I don't intend to hesitate when asked who was the stronger. Tara, like Assange, knew that carrying the truth would be the hardest labor. Tara knew that her assailant wasn't gonna make us any safer, and knew he's just the type of man to hand a decent foreign leader US printed walking papers, and knew he'd be relentless and aggressive in the war he'd wage upon her very character, that his attempts to weaken and degrade and embarrass her would be her only compensation. But I strongly doubt that anyone could ever have foreseen the stream of hate that came from quote-unquote progressives and the self-styled titans of survivor advocation. So if you really think there's something to be gained out of sharing your pain with the world, you are sorely mistaken. The Biden team just dragged their feet addressing Tara's allegations until they had a decent list of smears, then they aired them out on every station. And it turns out no one wants to hear the truth of who they praised as being worthy of such bloated liberal celebration. That no one wants to really know the person they've so valiantly defended, even when it meant they had to gloat and shit all over someone braver than they'd be if given the occasion. Now cue the faceless comment squad invasion. Cue those fuckers crawling out the woodwork to come analyze the way you wore your hair and what you wear. Like your appearance waives your rights, or that somehow you're the reason for your situation. Somehow they've decided you should bear responsibility for what such monstrous men insist on doing. Somehow they're deluded by the empty, hypocritical, and useless fucking platitudes that bastard keeps on spewing. And I think it's very telling that the best of their excuses when they try to come and justify our president's abuses is a hearty butt Trump. In which case I'll remind you that you never saw the news attempt to sell us Donald Trump like he was morally upstanding or a decent human. But when Joe says something bigoted or ogles someone's little kid, CNN says, isn't this refreshing? Biden's like a mix of JFK and FDR with all the finer parts of Harry Truman. Christ, I know that they don't think that we're the brightest, but at least pretend we got a couple lumens. Ask yourself if you have ever questioned what they fed you, or do you just shut your eyes and then consume it? And now ask yourself if you ate every one of Biden's lies under guise of harm reduction and the promise of a slight improvement. And now imagine long ago that Biden chose to show you who he really was by traumatizing you for his amusement. Now imagine that you watched him touch a Bible with those filthy hands, and then assume the power of the highest seat in all the land, of knowing your attacker wields a global coalition born of 3-letter agencies who'll make a life's mission out of trying to discredit you through lies, damn lies, and collusion. Big tech is never gonna separate from our surveillance state. Fuck's sakes, they're just a breath away from total fusion. So there will come a time where even if you see the light, your voice will never reach the sky through all the bots and all the noise pollution. So trust us when we tell you that the masking of abuses is perhaps this country's oldest institution. And I know nothing nobler than facing it in honor of the truth when you know that the people holding power have been neutralizing truth since there was wet ink on the Constitution. So know that Tara's truth is something crucial to the movement. And if you see yourself a partner to the revolution, help this country see through all the baseless propaganda through the crux of Joe's illusions. And recognize that Tara Reade gave everything she had so she could tell us what the truth is. Recognize the decent thing to do when someone bears their soul and shows their bruises is not to ask for context or offer up your own solutions. Your job is just to listen with an honest mind and put yourself on Tara's side a moment so you understand the path she chooses. That there is no instant fame worth the dragging of your name. And if that's what you think, you've a lot to learn about the kind of facts the mob can handle and the kind that it refuses. You've a lot to learn about the news and all its many uses. Guess you've yet to learn the truth the news will serve as fruit from which they've squeezed out all the juices. And we all eat the husk and just pretend it's full of nutrients and isn't really useless. But the jaws of our ability to yield accountability are absolutely toothless. So don't you kid yourself that any lips are being loosened. They won't ever tell us where the bodies are or show us where the proof is. It's on you to recognize the lechery our president so regularly oozes. It's on you to muster up some honesty and ask yourself how Biden won your trust, but it's America that loses. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises.
They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if
Good evening, everyone. This is Tara Reade. I'm your host. This is The Politics of Survival. And I have someone I greatly admire, and I feel very fortunate that he took time out of a very intense period of geopolitics that we're experiencing right now. I called it the politics of diplomacy for a reason. I brought in the UN ambassador of Russia, Dmitry Polyanskiy. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Dmitry, and accepting this invitation. Truly honored, truly honored. Thank you. One of the things when you sent me your bio, and for the audience to listen, go ahead and look on the links below. You'll see Dmitry's Twitter handle and also a little bit more about him. But one of the things I was impressed with, which I know is part of the work that you do, you speak probably like 6 languages. Is that correct?
Well, I wouldn't say that I speak them equally good. My English is more active right now, but it depends on the country where you work. So I started as Orientalist in Tunisia, so I spoke Arabic and French at this moment. Now I would say that I understand Arabic, but I wouldn't dare to speak it fluently with somebody. But I will need some time to pick it up again. So some languages are kind of conserved, you know. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I know that in your bio, it also said that you've been doing your present position, which is the first deputy UN ambassador since 2018. Is that correct? Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's true.
So that was sort of, you know, and I know that, I don't know if you know any of my writing, but I was talking about Russophobia back in 2018 and my fear about what the US was trying to push and NATO back then. And you came in at a very intense time. Can you talk a little bit about like what the arc of your work has been like, what it's like to work in this environment in this particular point of history?
Well, I can tell you that I have an impression that I had 3 different postings. So one posting was starting from 2018, and we had quite good cooperation on many issues. Of course, there was always a difference of opinion, which we are not afraid of. Then we came to COVID. COVID was a very special time. Everybody was on Zoom, everybody was digital, and we lacked very much human diplomacy, because diplomacy is not done through the internet. You need to have contact for many reasons, and I don't think it was a very good experience to have this. And the third posting started this February, of course, with the beginning of our special military operation. I would say that the initial period was extremely difficult and challenging because, well, we all understood that we were heading towards some kind of a difficult time, that Western countries do not want to listen to our arguments, that problems are persisting in Ukraine, that Western countries and especially United States are covering up the Ukrainian regime, the crimes and wrongdoings. So we were feeling that something is coming, but nobody, of course, had this understanding of when exactly this will happen. And when it happened, of course, the initial reaction of United States and Western countries was quite harsh in terms of Russophobia. What we saw was the desire to kind of cancel everything Russian. And this is very disappointing because we always felt that Russia was misunderstood. We always felt that Russian politics, Russian positions were misrepresented for especially American and the European public. But we never imagined that there were so many kind of emotions like hatred and Russophobia, things that you can't easily explain, even if you do not concur with somebody in terms of his political views and his positions, because this is something different. When people are speaking about canceling Russian culture, I can't imagine what kind of hatred you must feel inside to promote such things. What is Tchaikovsky guilty of in terms of Russian special military operation? What is Russian language guilty of? And what about millions of my compatriots who happened to live in the United States and elsewhere? The things that they were facing, this kind of discrimination, closing of banking accounts, I don't know, forceful forceful requirements to condemn politics of Putin in order to be eligible to do something or not to do something. What about sport? How come the Russian sportsmen are to blame, and what is the reason behind asking them again to condemn Russia's actions to be able to participate in certain events? This is really disgusting, frankly. And
Yes.
this period was very intense at the beginning. I can't say it's over right now, but I feel that a lot of people now understand a little bit better the situation, and they see that we need to find a kind of solution to the problems that we face. And solution always includes dialogue, of course. And if you want to cancel everything Russian, of course, you will not be able to find a solution with Russia. And the solution must be with Russia. I think everybody understands this.
You know, and it's just to go further with that, what I noticed, because my audience knows me as a political content creator and commentary, you know, I make commentary about politics. They know I've been talking about this for a while. And one of the things that was shocking, because I used to do op-eds for RT has been censored and of course banned in Europe. And RT was a lovely place. I mean, I was so lucky to have my writing be considered, you know, good enough to be published by them. And I've always, you know, I have, you know, a great feeling about RT. And so many people were really disheartened that they didn't have that other lens, because it's now they're trying to siphon the information, but they're even, of course, censoring Western journalists that are speaking out against this, what we call proxy war that the US and NATO is fighting against Russia via Ukraine, using Ukrainians as cannon fodder. And, you know, one of the things I wanted to speak to or ask you about was the perception that many Americans thought it started in February that are not really paying attention, right? They thought the military operation and the special operation, that was the beginning in February 2022. But actually, this went back to 2014 when there was a US-backed coup that was exposed by Julian Assange, and other, you know, legacy papers reported on it. It happened in 2014. Victoria Nuland was involved with that. And 6 to 7% of that government were Nazis, except and go further, they're armed. And then all of the things that were happening in Donbass and the horrible murders that killed more than 14,000 Russians. It's really disheartening to not be able to hear that portion of the reality of how we got to this point in history. Are you finding that people are more open to discussing this and discussing the reality that there are Nazis in Ukraine that are killing civilians?
Well, most of the people with whom I'm dealing, most of our Western colleagues and diplomats, they prefer to be comfortably numb, as Pink Floyd was singing. Okay. So for them, it's comfortable to consider, to believe that the history started from February 2022, and nothing before that ever happened. So they say that it was Putin's war of choice, that it was Russian aggression, and it was just, you know, out of the blue. Russia decided to fight freedom-loving, open society like Ukraine, where everybody was enjoying Western type of human rights, where people were living in harmony. And then those bloody Russians are suddenly attacking, even not giving any reasons why did we attack, just because we were jealous maybe about what they achieved. That's Western perception. And unfortunately, it is being translated very widely. And it's common misperception of what has happened. Of course, you're absolutely right. In order to understand what was happening, you need to go back in history, which of course doesn't start in February. It's even doesn't start in 2014. It starts with the independence of Ukraine, which at the beginning was very friendly, very open towards Russia country. And it's hard to imagine, it was hard to imagine, I remember this time, that we would have ever any problems with Ukrainians. But what happened at that time, of course, the West was in light of the most notorious theories of Brzezinski and the others, understanding that one needs to fragment Russia, Russian influence, to weaken Russia and to have it not as an adversary, but as a very weakened state, feeble and not capable of pursuing its own interests, and maybe then to share our natural resources and so on and so forth. This politics was very successful at the beginning of the 90s, but with the appointment of President Putin, I think this all stopped, and that's then when we started to have problems with the West, when we decided to really to defend our national interests. But back at the beginning of independence, Ukrainian leadership was again very open and friendly. It was Russia, but then step by step, people who were in immigration in Ukraine, and many of them were descendants from those who collaborated with the Nazis, they started to come and to infiltrate the society, to create NGOs, to kind of brainwash population, playing on nationalist feelings, and with nationalism came this neo-Nazism, because currently in Ukraine, when people are saying, why are you always playing this neo-Nazism cards? There can't be neo-Nazis in Ukraine because their president is a Jew. I'm saying that it doesn't change anything. What is important is that, for example, the leaders of the neo-Nazis, Stefan Bandera and Roman Shukhevich, who are implied in a lot of crimes against humanity during the Second World War, are national leaders of Ukraine. For me, that's an indicator, and not who is the president of this country.
Right.
He's also maybe he's a Jew, but he's also a Russian speaker. But it didn't prevent him from introducing very draconic discriminatory laws against Russian language and Russian speakers during his staying in power, despite the fact that he was elected by the residents of Ukraine, by the citizens, because of his pro-Russian program and because of his promises to deal equally with those who speak Russian and Ukrainian, and to live in peace and to seek peace with Russia. He did exactly the opposite right now. So when people tell me that Zelensky is an elected president, I say, yes, he is elected. He was elected, but he was elected for the program which he didn't implement. And he's doing exactly the opposite thing what people were voting for. So coming back to this problem between Russia and Ukraine and its origins, I might say that, to cut a long story short, that step by step, what we had in reality, we were facing kind of a hornet's nest on our borders, which was very much threatening us. And everybody understood that at some point of time, sooner or later, we will have to deal with this problem, because these people were not absolutely going to implement Minsk agreements, which were internationally acknowledged framework for settlement of this inter-Ukrainian crisis. And this was the only possibility for Ukraine to keep these Russian speakers and Russian-speaking regions within the country, providing them with certain guarantees to speak their own language and to worship the heroes that they want to worship. This is normal. I can't say that, well, people are wondering why, for example, in Belgium, there are 2 official languages. And can one imagine that, for example, one part of Belgium would dominate the other and forbid it from speaking its own language? What would be the reaction in France if the Wallonian population is not able to speak French?
Right.
What would be reaction in Germany if in Switzerland German is banned and French is dominating? Right. I don't think they will be happy, but it's just to give you an example of what kind of feelings we would have. Of course, it's not a reason for starting military campaign, but the reason for starting military campaign is when your compatriots living there, children, women, elderly, are being shelled daily, when there are victims, and nobody is paying any attention to this. Everybody is blaming Russia for this, which is ridiculous. And we understood that for the sake of these people, for the sake of their future, we need to take action if Minsk agreements are not working. And it turned out that we are absolutely right, because already in the course of military operation, we recovered very convincing documents, military documents from planning, which were indicating that Ukraine was about to start assault on Donbass in a couple of weeks, actually at the beginning of March. And if you also remember, if you're recalling, people are now saying that, well, Russia all of a sudden started its military operation. But you need to come back to this time, and you need to recall a very serious intensification of military activity by Ukraine in Donbass, intensification of shellings, when hundreds of thousands of refugees flooded Russia. So this preceded the days when the military operation was started. So we can't say that it happened out of the blue. It's really, there were a lot of serious factors that we had to consider. And of course, we have to get rid of this hornet's nest, because this is very dangerous for our country. It's by the way, dangerous for the whole of Europe. Europe doesn't understand it at this stage because it's blinded by Russophobia and political calculations. But in reality, it's even more dangerous for Europe than it is for Russia, because this is really a very, very dangerous regime, promoting very dangerous values. And Europeans are just very, very blind. Even the Poles are very blind right now, which really astounds me, because I worked in Poland for 3 years. I liked this posting very much, and I know what the Poles think about Stefan Bandera. His forces massacred 300,000 Poles during the Second World War. Wow. And if you ask a rank and file Polish citizen, what does he think about Banderites, he would of course swear, and he would tell you what really it happened during the Second World War, because it's in the memory of the generation. But the politicians, for political reasons, they prefer to kind of sugarcoat it and to say that, well, you know, it's good for Poland because it's bad for Russia. Everything that is bad for Russia is good for Poland. I can't understand why people are so blind at this time. And not only the Poles, the others as well. Second World War was not very much very far away time, and I personally I can't be indifferent when I see swastika painted somewhere. I understand that this has a relation to something very bad, and we need to stop this. But swastikas are everywhere in Ukraine. You have them insignia, even on the supreme commander of Ukraine, Mr. Zaluzhny. As it turned out, he's wearing swastika, and nobody is saying, well, this is bad. I can't imagine how this happened. We were all fighting Nazism during the Second World War, Americans, Britons, Russians, and now they say, well, it's nothing serious. You just need to leave Ukraine alone. I can't imagine how we came to this.
Well, I know for you, because you're here in the United States doing a lot of your work. So in the day-to-day, trying to have these conversations, do you feel like anyone is listening, or do you feel like it's just, I mean, it must be hard to do the work of diplomacy in this kind of environment, is what I'm trying to say. I mean, what can you describe that, what your technique is, or how you're trying to push through that so you can do your job, which is to try to, bridge communication and be listened to, but also, try to figure it out.
Well, let's distinguish between open official meetings in front of the cameras and something that we have informal in couloirs, where we maintain contacts and where people, even from Western countries, they totally understand what's happening. Okay. Again, they prefer to stay comfortably numb for certain reasons, but they don't sell us crazy things like that we are allegedly shelling the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant where we are stationed. So they don't do in the couloirs.
Or that you sabotage your own pipeline, the Nord Stream pipeline.
Absolutely. We're such crazy people that we are doing all these things against ourselves, and we do not switch our brains on. So they do not sell it to us in the couloirs. They would rather ask us questions. So how do we finish it? What do you think should be done? So it's normal conversation. Of course, they will not repeat it in the spotlight. And there is also one more dimension, which is very important for me. Okay. It's the perception of people with whom with common people in America, people in the street, especially not in New York, but somewhere else where I'll try to travel. because when people learn that I'm Russian, for example, I don't feel animosity. I don't feel any threat. They are curious. They are just trying to find out what is really happening. I can't say that many of them have deep knowledge of history and of what is happening, but I don't claim that in Russia people are very well educated on matters of United States history. So this is understandable, but I feel this interest, and I'm also aware of the fact that we are now living at the moment when there is a new Iron Curtain, information Iron Curtain, which is being imposed by the West. You started, you touched upon this topic with the RT. By the way, RT is surviving. RT is still very popular, and people are watching it through internet. I myself today gave an interview to RT earlier today, and people just don't have the sources where to get the information. It resembles me of the time. I still remember times of the Soviet Union. I was very young at that moment, but I still was a teenager. I remember we didn't have alternative sources of information. We didn't have internet. We had to believe everything that the press was publishing. Now, of course, you have a lot of information in abundance. It's flooding you, but it doesn't help you to get the picture of the events, because it's not only flooding you, it's also brainwashing you. And there is a perception, the official perception, the right perception of the events that is being imposed on you, and you have to stick within this right perception of things. Otherwise, you will feel kind of a person from the fringes. I don't know. So that's why for people here, I can imagine how difficult it is for them to get sources of alternative information, and they have to consume everything that mass media is really presenting them, and this is damaging. I stopped watching US, UK, European sources of information since February, because this is really brain damaging. And I really try to read something, but not to watch something on TV. I stopped watching TV programs since then. And this is very deplorable, because everything that is alternative, everything that presents the point of view that is not very comfortable for somebody is labeled Russian propaganda. It's labeled something that Kremlin is promoting. So when we are speaking in Security Council and our Western ex-partners don't like it, they are saying that Russia is spreading disinformation there, even if we are speaking about facts. This is already kind of a pattern of reaction to what we are saying. And this is a very, very, I would say, poisonous pattern. This is very bad for the society, because if you limit yourself to kind of right information, then at some point of time, you will just find yourself in a position when you will have no information at all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As you know, I'm an independent content creator myself, and our voices are very much being silenced. Some of us are getting banned from pay apps like PayPal, Venmo. That's one way, because being independent, that's how you basically get your income. So many journalists that are independent doing that. Wyatt Reade is an American journalist. He was put on the Ukrainian kill list. 2 weeks ago, he was almost killed. He on WhatsApp had given his location. An hour later, the hotel was bombed. He was targeted. He missed it by 30 seconds. Yeah. The Western media has not even covered it. I mean, I covered it. I talked with him on our show, but I wanted to talk to you for a second, because I have to say, in my lifetime, I have never seen so much propaganda. Well, of course, we're living in the age of big tech. So there's corporate overloads, now that are, really. So 22 corporations own most of the Western media. So that's very narrow, 22. That's not very many. And so they're really siphoning it. So you see American oligarchs really taking control of the information. And you see that weapons manufacturers are making a lot of money. In fact, one of them close to $1 trillion is Raytheon, right? Okay, in this time. So war, there's an incentive, right, to make weapons and not peace. And so you've seen America, I'm sure as a diplomat, you've watched Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, you've watched the imperialism in South America and the coups. So as you watch this escalation and you hear the US president talk about the possibility of nuclear war, as a diplomat, and you're being silenced kind of by the Western media, what do you think would be a good way to push through this so that regular people, regular American citizens like myself and my audience listening right now can really hear what Russia has to say, and not, because many of us know that Russia is not the enemy, China is not the enemy. We know that there's a little small elite group that are making a lot of money. And in my personal opinion, and I'm not saying this is yours, so this is my personal opinion. My personal opinion is that this is the biggest money laundering scheme in history. And I think years from now, we'll see there's another $50 billion that they're going to send to Ukraine on the table, besides the close to 80 billion that's almost gone. And no one knows where that money is, and no accounting is being done. And the American infrastructure is falling apart. We have 550,000 people that are homeless in this country, 70,000 homeless in LA. Inflation is the highest it's been in 40 years. Our economy is tanking under the Biden administration. So these are my opinions, but anyone who voices them gets shut down as a Russian propagandist. I lived on a farm in Wisconsin. Okay. I'm from California. This is my opinion, watching and analyzing, because I have a law degree and studied political science and international relations. This is my opinion. This is the opinion shared by many Americans, but we feel we have no voice. There's this war happening by America and NATO, and we never even had citizen consent for it, right? So
this is very deplorable.
Yeah.
So
what are your thoughts about that? I mean, for like moving forward with diplomacy, what can be done to de-escalate this very dangerous moment, the most dangerous moment for humanity right now? Like what can we do?
Well, my personal opinion is that it's really a personal choice, because at our age, with internet, with all these sources of information, it depends on you where you take them. And it's not again at Soviet age, when there were absolutely no alternative sources of information apart from shortwave radios of very, very lousy quality and with technical problems. But it's up to you. You can just consume whatever is being downloaded to you from mass media, or you can search for yourself. You still have social media. We consider that our work at the Security Council is especially very important, because this is one of the few rostrums which is still not censored, and they have to relay everything that we say, and it remains in the protocols in the procès-verbals of the meetings, so it's accessible for wider public. It depends on whether you need it or not, whether you have the benefit of the doubt or not, whether you consume everything or not. So I don't think that there should be certain decision somewhere that this situation will change all of a sudden. It will not change all of a sudden. It depends on the consumers. It depends on those who are needing this information. If there is a demand for more sources of information, if people would say that I want to watch RT because I really need alternative source of information, I don't think that there will be big resistance if many people demand some kind of changes here. And well, this information is abundant. Sometimes it's very difficult to distinguish between real propaganda, between manipulations, and this kind of information. But you just need to have many sources of information. I think they are still available nowadays, and you really can do it easily.
So I mentioned the I know we're coming up to the time where you say you have to leave, but if you can stay a couple more minutes, it's up to you.
I will.
Okay.
I will.
Okay. So we're at this dangerous point in history. I think it's unprecedented, right? It's since 1962 we haven't, and so your position is so important. So ways that citizens can get your voice heard, like for instance, my show, of course, RT you can find on Rumble. You can find this show on Rumble, we're live right now, and alternative platforms. But beyond, like, are you seeing, like, for instance, I've heard Claire Daly and Mick Wallace from Ireland, of the UN, speak very passionately against this proxy war that U.S.
They're
and NATO,
European Parliament, if I'm not
European
mistaken.
Parliament, yes, and they're speaking very
Yeah,
passionately.
they're very
about it.
brave. Yeah, very brave.
Yeah. So are you finding any of that within your colleagues from other places that don't have a monetary interest, but would actually be harmed by all of this, as we all will, but like don't have any monetary interest, right? In the weapons manufacturing. So is there any hope like that we can move past this point of we're at a point of almost no return? Like what are your thoughts? Where are we going?
It's very challenging time. It's very challenging time. I wouldn't conceal. And the fact is that a lot of people just don't realize how dangerous it is, because it all seems like in a movies somewhere that doesn't concern you. But the fact is that you're absolutely right. We face NATO in Ukraine. This is a proxy war, and there is a very, very thin red line there. Some people are very keen to cross this red line, like the United Kingdom, for example. Today, we summoned ambassador of United Kingdom in Moscow. We presented the proofs on British participation in attacks on the Black Sea Fleet in Sebastopol. There are also indications that the Brits are involved in the blowing of Nord Stream pipelines. So this is already crossing this very thin red line, because these are attacks on critical infrastructure. So what next? If NATO is getting involved, we have also very few doubts that the Ukrainian leadership would do whatever it can, or whatever provocation is necessary to get NATO involved, because this is involved directly. I mean, because this is their only hope for survival. They understand that militarily they can't stand Russia. Of course, they understand that at some point of time, people in Ukraine will get their own opinion on what's really happening in the country and who is to blame. And it's not Russia. It's Ukrainian internal politics that brought the country to this dead end where it is right now. So for them, the only way out is to get NATO involved. And what would help is kind of very big provocation. We were warning, for example, the Security Council about the dirty bomb. This is one of the scenarios, and our warnings, I think, worked, and Ukrainians had to change plans, but they still have a lot of opportunities to try to get NATO involved. And this is really very, very important and very dangerous, because then some things may happen according to some uncontrollable spiral. And nobody is interested in such a development. So, of course, diplomacy should work. But diplomacy means talking and mostly listening. So we hope that still the leaders of Western countries will take their responsibility and will engage with us, with the others, to work on the way forward. Because we were saying that we need serious discussion on European security, on how the world will survive this time, and these demands were rejected. They were looking at it in a very condescending way, saying that it's not serious, it's Russian propaganda, there is no need for this. And even now, unfortunately, I heard, for example, if I'm not mistaken, the German foreign minister saying that we need to establish a European security system against Russia. So it means that Russia is not involved, and this is a terrible mistake. Because if we want to have to get out of this, everybody, then we need to think about something collective, something which embraces the interests of everybody. But if we are thinking in this East against West schemes, then I think we don't have anything good in front of us. There will be more problems. Hopefully, they will not lead to the war. But this is the kind of mentality that is not helpful. And I hope that the mentality, the open-minded people will prevail, that they will understand that this is not all of a sudden that we found ourselves where we are, and that there should be very, it should be thinking out of the box. So people should really think about some schemes, formats that would accommodate interests of everybody, including Russia, and maybe first and foremost Russia, because our interests were neglected by a lot of Western countries for many, many years, which led to this crisis, which is not Russia-Ukraine crisis. It's a bigger crisis. It's a crisis of trust. It's a crisis of visions. It's multifaceted thing, and it's not. We don't have time to discuss it in detail. But this is really important. This is really big.
Well, two more things, and I know you have very important places to go and be and people to talk to, but two more things I just wanted you to touch on, if you could. There's something that came to mind when you just said that, and that is that I feel like we're in this point of history of we are going to a multipolar world, which it is simply a reality where Eastern economies have been booming, and there's innovation and there's creation of things that are going on with their own resources. So there's a multipolar world and a unipolar world, and it's like the US and Britain, which is like almost like US is being an extension of Britain with the imperialism. They want to hold on to this unipolar. They want to hold on to power at all costs, even if it costs humanity, right? So because of my work in the past, I know that there are people around Biden that believe a limited nuclear war is possible. My personal belief and opinion, and I think it's shared by a lot of people, is that that is not possible. There is no possibility of anyone winning a limited nuclear war. But you have people, hawks in the US administration and NATO, that very much believe they can do a limited one. So you have that problem, the problem of holding on to the unipolar. So what are your thoughts on that, the unipolar versus the multipolar world coming, and also the limited nuclear war? And also, could you spend the rest of your time just talking about anything you'd like the Western audience that's listening to me now? I know I have some listeners from all over the world, but in particular, the ones that are so propagandized, anything you'd like them to know that is just not getting through. Could you speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Tara. I think that there shouldn't be any doubts in the fact that nobody in Russia wants a nuclear war, neither a limited nuclear war or non-limited nuclear war. We understand where it can lead. We have no illusions that this would be devastating for everybody. Mm-hmm. So if somebody starts this, it will not be Russia. But of course, if somebody starts it again against Russia, according to our nuclear doctrine, we will have to retaliate. Mm-hmm. And that's the only possible scenario. There were repeatedly speculations about Russia contemplating on using tactical nuclear weapons, which were denied at all levels, including our president. And we were citing our nuclear doctrine, which implies only a retaliatory strike, or in situations when there is an existential threat for our country. The two only scenarios for using nuclear weapons, and we will stick to this. As multipolar versus unipolar, it's really ridiculous to see how United States and its allies are trying to preserve its superiority and to remain on top of the world, denying everybody else in Africa, in Latin America, in Asia, the right to develop the way they want and to have their own share of prosperity and resources. Of course, this system should change, and it's inevitable. If the United States sticks to this Pax Americana, this will be a tragedy for everybody, because everybody understands that this world is something of the past. We need to go somewhere else. Our position is that there is a multipolar world coming. We see several polars apart from the United States and ourselves. So we see China, we see India, we see Brazil, many other countries. It's not that this is a selective club. It's the reality, the objective reality, that decisions in the world should be taken in this college of countries that have influence and have resources and have capacities to influence real international processes. In many ways, United States no longer has these capacities and these possibilities. And this is the fact of life, whether they like it in Washington or not. And the sooner people and politicians in Western countries recognize this, the better for everybody. So we hope that this signal will come through and that we will really start discussing these things seriously. Actually, Security Council should be one of the pillars of this multipolar world. But what we see now, we see that there is a bloc discipline, and the attempts to show that the West is united, the West is powerful, Russia is isolated. This is not true. We see it in the United Nations. This is absolutely not true. This is the picture that the West wants to preserve. But again, what is at stake? I think our common future is at stake. Future of the United States is at stake as well. Nobody wants United States to crumble. Nobody wants United States to disappear. No, we're very friendly, but we really want to United States to engage in discussing this issue, engage in true international cooperation and not exploitation. We want United States to stop playing the role of world policeman, because nobody charged United States to be world policeman, but United States still wants to keep this role. And NATO also being a threat to Russia, to China, to many others. So we need to do something about this concept of the bloc, of military bloc, which was supposed to be transformed after the end of the Cold War, which was supposed to be transformed in something positive, multilateral, something like OSCE plus, but this never happened, and it remains a military bloc, and of course military bloc will provoke military action, military counteraction. So this is inevitable. What's my message to the Americans who are watching your show? Well, I think that maybe a couple of words. There is a misperception that Russians are the losers in the Cold War. And this is very dangerous. We have absolutely different position in my country. We think that it was our common enterprise, the achievement of Gorbachev, of all the others who changed our world, and we all were really doing a lot. So the collapse of the Soviet Union was not because of the weakness of our economy. There were a lot of factors, but one of the factors was also the trust that we had in the West at this moment, and the promises that were given. And now we understand that they were empty promises. So the world hasn't changed. And all of a sudden, people here in the States just labeled us losers in the Cold War. And of course, the losers, they don't have any right for anything. This is totally wrong. This is our common achievement, and people in Russia do not think so. And if you really want to create something positive, I think we need to come back to this understanding that there are no winners and no losers in the Cold War, that this is our common world, and countries should be equal, and they should cooperate on equal basis, on equal footing. Otherwise, we are not moving anywhere. Otherwise, we will not avoid new problems, new challenges, and we will not have any tools to deal with them if we are apart, if we are not understanding where we are going and what are the principles that we share collectively.
Thank you. Well, there you have it, Dmitry Polyanskiy. Thank you so much, Ambassador.
Thank you, Tara.
You have been amazing. I feel like I've learned so much this evening. You're active on social media, you're active on Twitter, and your Twitter handle is in this stream. So people, now your DMs are open. Are you open to answering questions if people send you questions and whatnot?
I try to do it. Of course, I can't promise to anybody that I will answer questions. I'm also very active on Telegram. I know it's more Russian platform, but I also have an English account there, and there are a lot of resources on Telegram that I think might be interesting for American users as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm on Telegram as well, and I do have a robust following. So those of you that are listening, please check out Telegram, and Substack is another place. So, really lifting these all, other platforms and being diverse with the platforms, I think is important with all the censorship happening. Any final thoughts before you leave? I know you have a busy schedule, and thank you.
Well, I have to continue working, unfortunately. That's what we do here.
Okay.
So thank you very much. All the best to you, and all the best to our viewers. And I hope that it was fruitful and encouraging for everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Ambassador. Thank you so much again.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. You can look again at the streams and see more. There you have it. We'll see you next time on the Politics of Survival. Good night, everyone.